This call asks Canada to recognize residential schools as a central aspect of its history as a country, to never forget the harms, the history, and legacy of residential schools, and the children who paid the ultimate price.
This Thursday will mark the 103rd anniversary of the end of the First World War. And remarkably, the Commonwealth Graves Commission and the Department of National Defence are still identifying the remains of soldiers previously unknown who fell in that war. They take a marker off when they find the name and the location, the family of someone who died over a century ago. They take the marker off the grave that says, "A soldier of the Great War, known unto God," which is how the unknown soldiers' graves were marked. They take that solemn, kind of forlorn headstone off and put a new one on that says, "This is Corporal so-and-so or Sergeant such-and-such of such-and-such a town in Canada somewhere, who fell on October 10th, 1915 at this or that battle." And that gives some closure. It gives some closure to the family, and I think it must give some peace to the soul to know that they have finally been sent home, as it were. The latest one is a member of Winnipeg's Queen's Own Cameron Highlanders, who was identified in October, almost exactly 103 years after he was killed in a battle. His name's George Lettingham. He was a corporal. And a researcher at the Department of National Defence was looking at unknown soldiers' records and said, this headstone says that an unknown corporal was killed October 12th, 1918. But there was no one from the Cameron Highlanders or the larger 43rd Infantry Battalion, which the Highlanders were part of, who died on that day. That day, in fact, for almost 2 weeks, the Highlanders had been taking a break. They had been in an enormous battle on October the 1st, 1918. Nearly 1,000 men had been wounded or killed on October 1st from the 43rd Battalion. And so the 43rd Battalion had been resting. So it couldn't have been someone killed October 12th. And the researcher thought, well, let's look back at the orders of battle and see when the last corporal from the Cameron Highlanders had died in battle. And it turned out October 1st. And the only corporal killed October 1st from the 43rd Battalion was George Lettingham from the Winnipeg Cameron Highlanders. And so that now has been used to identify one more of the sad remains that had laid unclaimed, unmarked in graves in Europe. And that got me thinking. We spend about $10 million a year, the Commonwealth Graves Commission, with money from Australia, UK, New Zealand, other Commonwealth countries and us, continuing to try and identify remains that are over a century old. Why wouldn't that work for residential schools? We now know that there are 4,000 or more unmarked graves at the sites of former residential schools in Canada. Why not use the same solemnity to give those remains their final rest, to identify them and get them back to their families or back to their original communities, at least virtually? If there's no one left in the community, if there's no one left in their family, then build national memorials the way we have built and maintained grave sites all over northern France and southern Belgium to commemorate our war dead. I think the children who died in residential schools, who were in the care of the Government of Canada and lots of the major churches, deserve as much dignity, as much of a chance to be identified as our war dead from over a century ago. For Post Media, I'm Lorne Gunter.